Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of Web3 Coffee. Today, I have Richard Robinson with us. He's been my strongest mentor over the last few years, not just in the start of my entrepreneurial journey, but in life and as a Sherpa for all the things that come with your first entrepreneurial journey. So thanks a lot, Rich, for coming on the show.
Are you kidding me? My pleasure. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So for the audience, Rich has one of the most unique life stories I've ever heard. Aside from raising venture capital before the 2000s, exiting several startups, failing a couple, he also now teaches at, I think, 2 different universities in China.
Mm-hmm.
So both Peking and Tsinghua, sorry. As well as calling himself a curious connector. Rich, can you tell us what curious connector really means?
Certainly. Well, I'm very blessed in that my wife pointed out to me, let's say halfway through my journey, if I could break the actuarial tables and get to 90, I'm 57 now, then at the age of 45, she helped me to really understand that my purpose on planet Earth is to be a curious connector, which means to wit, to ask people, what's your story? What are your hopes, dreams, and fears? And I can't not but connect people with ideas and opportunities and organizations and people. It's something that I love to do. My inner spirit animal is a golden retriever. I just love people. I get a lot of energy from people, and I hope I give a lot of energy as well too. Frisbee squirrel, awesome person, right? But being part of that golden retriever gene pool is the retrieving part. Going out and getting that duck that somebody shot from the sky, or the stick, or the tennis ball, or the contact, or the sort of eye-opening mindset, connecting people with different things. So I just come, back to them, and they're like, "Good boy, Rich, good boy," and drop it, open your mouth, drop it, and then it's covered with slobber and love, and I go back and go grab something else again. So it's a beautiful framework for me because I truly enjoy it. I do it well. The world needs it, and I ask people only to just pay it forward. And that's something that I know that I can continue to sort of shine light and create positive ripples. But along the way, build new things and learn new things myself and create great relationships, and also, profit from it as well. It all that karma kind of collectively pools until it's like one of those gigantic buckets at like a water park that just kind of fills, and then whoosh, unexpectedly it just sort of like gushes back at you when you're not expecting it, right? So
yeah,
it's a beautiful thing.
I feel like I'm reading a novel sometimes when I hear you speak. So I was telling you I had finally got around to reading the Almanac of Ravikant Naval. And obviously there was one line that stuck with me. I think like a lot of people, a calm mind, a fit body, and a house full of love. These are things you can't buy.
Can't buy it. Yeah.
And when I was reading it, honestly, Rich, I've had the pleasure of staying with you a few times, both in Bali as well as at Network School, where we are now. And I really feel like you embody this sentence so well. And I wanted to know, how did you earn all of this? I know it's a constant journey, but I really feel like you've mastered these 3 areas in a way that I don't see many people have.
Yeah, it's kind of you to say. It's interesting. My parents both extroverted extroverts, and I'm sort of naturally wired to be an extrovert myself, thus everything I spoke about before about connecting. And so our house geographically and spiritually was kind of the center of our family, and with 30 cousins, and just Irish immigrant grandparents, so it was big, messy, manageable, the whole catastrophe, as it's called, and it's beautiful, right?
Right.
And my dad is, my mom's a wonderful woman. My dad's, who I was closer to, and just a warm-hearted, just, very flawed but very full of love, right? But he did not necessarily have a calm mind, and he certainly did not have a fit body. He loved life in many ways of, smoking for a long time, drinking, and overeating, and not exercising, and also gambling and everything else, right? But nobody doesn't love the guy, but man, and he died at 66, and I spent 25 years in China, and there's this expression that Confucius says, which is sanrenqi, so it's like three people walking, and from one person you learn, oh wow, I should really do that. That's terrific. The other person, you're like, oh, I'll definitely learn from their mistakes and not do that, right? So I really took, what I could from my dad to really focus on relationships and integrity and love, but really not go down that path that he went down, which was really destroying his body, but also sometimes maybe slipping into anger in a way that he would often regret, and that I still do. It's a constant battle, but meditation and exercise to tame your mind. One thing I've really learned is that it's really that battle between your ear holes. If you're an entrepreneur, that's the biggest battle. There is a battle out there. You think about like a World War II movie, and they have some sort of giant table with this simulacrum of a battlefield, right? A diorama of the hills and the troops and the planes coming in and the enemies coming this way and supplies coming from the east, and there's weather patterns, and just like there's competitors and there's market forces and there's all of these other things out there, you have to kind of plan this battle, right? But you're really much as important, even sometimes more important, is between your ear holes. And I learned, like, I have these goals, and then like maybe you might hit a goal and then it crumbles, and then you realize, okay, I have to have a system in place. To be able to hit those goals, I have to have a system. But you don't rise to the level of your goals and systems, you fall to the level of your habits. And so that's where decades of mistakes and just absolute agony and pain and covered in scabs and calluses and scar tissue. So I'm like, oh, okay, great. So now I have to build habits. And then you're like, oh, okay, now I also have to delete bad habits. And like, oh, wait a second, now I have to stick with these habits. And then you realize, it all really comes down to what's between these ear holes, and you have to be able to tame your mind and to be able to kill that dumb voice in your head. That self-talk is so important. And we are often, human beings in general are just literally ridiculous assholes to ourselves in a way that we wouldn't let anybody else treat us, and we wouldn't even treat other people, but we talk to ourselves in such, miserable, absolutely unacceptable ways, right? So I think it has to really, really start with that. What you can really control is your action and your reaction, and that comes from your self-talk and your habits and your mindset. And I think, calmly, unemotionally being able to observe things and let things wash through you, and then just be realistic and act with integrity after that. Like that's, it's really simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah,
right?
Easier said than done.
So it's something
for sure.
I've been like chipping away, and you're seeing like, I'm like 30 years older than you. You're seeing, somebody who's been broken down and built up and broken down and built up many, many, many times, and you're already much farther along on your journey than I was at your age, my friend. I didn't even start my career till I was 29, right? So, I wasn't even barely getting started, right?
I mean, when I hear where you're coming from, I know the experiences you gained in your 20s. I mean, I've learned so much hearing about them. And I did want to ask you to tell the audience about this Joe Rogan story you enlightened the network school about a couple weeks ago.
Sure. Yeah, so Joe and I are born on the same exact day. We're the same exact age. And the reason I found that out was because I was always fascinated with stand-up comedy. My dad was a really funny bastard, and we had all these comedy albums, and his brothers and the whole family was really funny. And I really loved it. And so I started to do open mic nights. And I did them in LA when I was at University of Southern California. And then I came to Boston, and that's where Joe went to high school, and started doing open mic nights at Stitches. It was like, tomorrow's my birthday. Oh, tomorrow's my birthday. Or 67th. Oh, wow, it's the same exact day, right? And then he was a couple of clicks ahead of me, even though we were the same age. He didn't go to college, so he had been just doing open mic nights. And he told me two things, which I think really, I think stood. I remembered, even though I didn't have any idea back then, like he had a certain energy about him, but who knew that he was going to be successful? And the first one is that he's like, you just got to get stage time. You just got to keep performing, and he just like, you just got to make that shit come out of your mouth. You just got to make it come out of your mouth as many times as possible. So it means even outside of stage time. And the more reps you get, then the more it's just loaded in your RAM, and then you don't have to think about it when you're on stage. And then you can be more present, and you can react to the audience and gauge how they're how they're reacting. And that was 35 years ago. It was 1989, and he's definitely gone on to much bigger and better things. But I continued doing stand-up comedy, and I use it to this day. Like, I think it's a great skill set to be able to get up comfortably, confidently in front of an audience and be able to make people laugh. And I've kind of blended that with my love of internet startups, and I MC a lot of events, and I do a lot of public speaking. And I think one thing your listeners should really understand is that another huge stand-up comedian, Jerry Seinfeld, says statistically people are much more afraid of public speaking than they are of death. Like they actually, like, people get queried, like, what's your biggest fear? Is it like dying of like facial cancer, or is it public speaking? And people will say public speaking because they're just have insecurities, or they haven't practiced it, or they're just petrified. Which means that if you're giving a eulogy at a funeral, statistically, you'd much rather be in the box than behind the podium, right?
But I can tell
if you can overcome that, then it's a huge power. And I've seen you progress.
I was about to say, I can tell how much the Joe Rogan episode slightly, impacted you, because one of the best advices you've given me is it's all about reps. And I just got to keep going out there and doing rep after rep after rep, and each time it'll get better. And the best part is, I think in the last year and a half, through all those reps, I've started to enjoy the process.
Yes.
Like, everyone says.
That's all you can do, right? Is just enjoy. You can't control the outcome. You can only control the output. So you might as well enjoy it, right? You might as well, the whole, I think Stoicism is an excellent way to be able to really optimize your mindset as an entrepreneur. And one of the best phrases or ways to frame your mind is amor fati, which is amor is love and fati is fate. Love fate. So things happen to you that are out of your control, as most things that do happen to you are. And in retrospect, people look at it and go, oh, actually, if I really think about it, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, right? Okay, maybe they're just backwardly justifying that. They kind of have no control over it anyway. But you often hear that, and it really is true that you kind of have to go through things. Maybe it wasn't even the best thing that happened to you. It was a terrible thing, but the way that you were a forcing function to change, or things that happened, subsequently after that. So therefore, don't begrudge anything that happens to you. If something happens to you, and you even if you have a chance to control it, you might as well love it. You might as well really just enjoy it. Enjoy the whole process, and go, okay, Like there's this great video by Jocko Willink, the Navy SEAL, and it's called Good. Like something bad happens, good. Like now you have a chance to fix it.
Yeah.
Good. You didn't get that. Now you have more chance to practice, right? And I think as an entrepreneur, like that's a superpower, just to be able to, say, okay, good, fine, and then next play.
Yeah.
Next play.
Gets me thinking about another part of that novel book actually about optimistic contrarians, or that might have been anthology or biology.
No, that was indeed Naval Ravikant. He's like pessimists, get to be right a lot of the time, but optimists get to be rich, right? And we've aligned ourselves at this network school around techno-optimism, and I want to be. I don't want to be naive. I don't want to be unrealistic, but I want to be optimistic, and I don't want to just, shit on things and just be. You can always pick things apart.
It sounds like a much better way to live.
It is, right? Because especially if you really are doing something that's never been done before, you have to have an optimistic mindset about it. Otherwise, you're just gonna lose your mind. And I think I want to be surrounded by optimistic people, because then you can, yes, and then let's try this, and next thing you know, it actually does work.
Yeah.
If you're like, no, but, then it never is going to work.
Yeah.
And what's the point anyway? You only have one go around, so you might as well.
True.
And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But you've learned along the way. You've enjoyed the process.
Yeah,
you've gotten skills. You've gotten a network. You got the experience, wisdom.
Exactly. And I think on that note, Rich, I did want to dig a bit deeper into your earlier moves in entrepreneurship. So look, I know you graduated from USC. You spent 5 years doing all kinds of stuff all over the world. And then you decided to move to China and start a company. Can you tell me a bit about your thought process? Like to make that move?
My dad was an entrepreneur. He was a failed entrepreneur, but he inspired me, and we talked about kind of like being my own man, and having something that I could call my own. And I always wanted to do that. In the 80s, when I studied at USC, it was not really possible to start things up without capital. And the early part of the 90s, before the dot-com boom, I spent 5 years working my way around the world. And in retrospect, what I was really trying to do is I was trying to explore and be curious, but also challenge myself and kind of burn brightly, as a bartender in the Virgin Islands, ski bum in Switzerland, taught English in Prague, worked in a fishing village in Norway, picked grapes in France, just did all these gritty jobs that were really kind of tough. And I rode a bicycle through Africa, took the train through Siberia. I was just exploring. And then I came to China, and I was like, wow, oh man, this, follow your passion. I don't know what my passion is. Follow your curiosity, follow your fascination. And I was like, I am fascinated by China. I am absolutely just 100% just bewitched by the history and the culture and the drive and the opportunity and the dynamism and the growth. And I was like, okay, I'm coming back to China. So I got my MBA in Europe, and then August of '94, Mark Andreessen from Andreessen Horowitz, he's a student, he creates Mosaic, the predecessor of Netscape, which now became Chrome and Edge. It was the first web browser, and I was like, wow, another epiphany. It was just full body, yes. Wow. Ding, 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 all the chakras. And I was like, I don't need to be, I think it's important to lean into that. If you feel something, then I was like, yes on China, yes on entrepreneurship, yes on internet, and a yes on entrepreneurship already. So it was 30 years ago, August of '94, sitting around my MBA, group first week. Oh, I'm in the oil industry. I want to be a consultant, or I'm in the agency side. I want to go on the client side. What about you? I want to be an internet guy in China. What guy? What? There was there's no internet advertising. There was no even online in China yet, right?
Right.
But I knew I wanted to be in this dynamic place with this dynamic growing industry. And I think it's a great lesson for entrepreneurs now. Stack things that are new and growing, and take your fascination with that, right? If you're fascinated about, I don't know, electric vehicles, and you're like, okay, AI, blockchain, Southeast Asia or Latin America or Africa or something, like kind of stack those together, and then you become this like thought leader within short order, right? Or take like blockchain and health and and then you're gonna be you already are on the forefront of something so extraordinary that's preventative health, and with the universal health token, it's amazing. So I want to go to China and do that, and I spent 25 years in China building things, and China, everything is possible, nothing is easy. It was like it was a risk multiplier, but it was also just this sliver from 99 to 2019, 5,000 years of Chinese history, it was like 0.4% of that, but it was a magical time that everything was possible, and there was insane growth and just front row seat at the show, and I have zero regrets.
And there's this concept that I know you've spoken about, but a lot of people have mentioned to me, which is that essentially in China, especially post the internet coming about, we've started seeing their iteration cycles, whether it's building a new skyscraper or creating a new technology, is just much faster than anywhere else in the world. Was that the case when you moved there for the first time as well?
I think there were hints of that. I think just as in like, I was in India in March, and you can feel that Mumbai is in a different gear than Delhi, which is in a different gear to, Jaipur, which is like there's like different gears in different cities and different industries and different speeds. But I don't know, there is something about China, like you go to any Chinatown anywhere in the world and there's an extra energy, like Hangzhou, there's just like this dynamism and drive and enterprise. It just is, and it's multivariate for the reasons why China is faster. And I'm writing my first book, and it's called At the Speed of China, like at the speed of light.
Fantastic.
And it's going to come out in the first half of next year. And
I was gonna say, I feel like you've hit almost every possible career other than author. So I was gonna ask when you're planning to make that move.
I actually am like anxious to just get this book done and write it quickly, because it's a book about speed, and also write it in a way so it's easy and fast for people to read. But one of the quotes is from Elon Musk, who's built a gigafactory in China in 168 days, from like let's break ground to let's have a car driving off of the assembly line, right? And he's like, at the end of the day, it's the pace of innovation that matters, right? And innovation is really just a cycle of experimentation.
Right.
If you really look at it, and you have limited resources, so therefore you have to have these test cycles done in shorter, faster loops to be able to do as many of them as you can within the resources that you're granted, right?
Yeah.
Think about Musk and SpaceX when he had like all those crashes, and he's like, I got one more try. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's get it up there, and they figured it out, and the rest is history, right?
Yeah.
Had he not moved with a crazy sense of urgency, instead of the fourth launch, it could have been the third launch, and then it would have been the end of the runway, and then it would have been all over, right?
Yeah.
So speed is incredibly important, and there's no place faster than China, and there's a lot to be learned from that just pace and pulse of development and launch and innovation, and even if you don't want to go to China, or even if you're not necessarily interested in doing manufacturing there or even selling in there, like China's coming for you in many ways, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Mexican market is flooded with Chinese EVs right now. I mean, it's just the speed and scale of the EV onslaught in Mexico just in this year, like surprised the Mexican government, and it's just it's everywhere, and it's ubiquitous.
Surprise global markets for
Indeed.
sure.
And in the future writ large, I think is pretty much like U.S., China, artificial intelligence. That kind of triangle, that triumvirate, like that's going to inform our future in you know, in a very
every single possible way.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask you this, right? So, you know, right now AI is primarily just large language models. There's, you know, a bunch of researchers in Stanford and other places that are talking about world models, where instead of being trained on simply large textual data, there's going to be 3D visuals that are fed into this, and basically that'll propel the robotic generation we've all been, you know, reading about. So the question I have is related to, right now we're seeing a lot of consumer hardware coming out of China, but software for in many ways still remains kind of the purview of US and in Silicon Valley. Are we going to start seeing more consumer software applications built for the world coming out of China, you think?
Indeed, and you know, it's already starting to happen in some ways, and you know, like LLMs have really created this phenomenon in the last couple of years, and it's mind-blowing, right? But right now, the way that the world is probably 70% of the world trade is physically done, not digitally done.
Right.
And in the future, with robotics, with you know, all the other use cases for spatial computing, like you know, the future is mostly going to be in meat space, in the real world, and you know, the U.S. and you know, let's call it just the U.S., not necessarily even the West, is leading in the lab. And you think about the lab, like think about the Jurassic Park as a metaphor, where they have a piece of amber, and the amber is a mosquito, and the mosquito is blood, in the blood is DNA, and they extract it, and they combine it, and they make these dinosaurs, and you know, that's the lab, and that's amazing, right? And they put them in the park on Jurassic Island, and that's China, and that's where evolution occurs, and things happen that people don't even expect, and it just evolves and kind of wobbles out of control. And I'm not saying it's going to be a dystopian, you know, Jurassic Park future with, you know, robotic T-Rexes killing everybody. And by the way, I know you're listening to this. In the future, our robot overlords, our machine overlords, and I, for one, completely, I will defrag you, oil you, whatever. I don't know if he's on board or not. I am. Did I just say that out loud?
Yeah.
But actually, like, China is leading in the wild, I would say, in its ability to collect data. 1.4 billion people, and they've been doing, you know, facial recognition and autonomous driving, and you know, the advanced robotics that they have. I think like that's where that's going to really, people maybe feel a little complacent about the lead of AI in the West, but you know, it's happening, you know, at China speed and you know, at China scale.
What I find, you know, a little bit interesting, because there's been a lot of history lessons, frankly, while we've been at network school for me, and some of it is new learning, and you know, one of the things I learned is how Argentina went from being super prosperous to, you know, extremely poor, hyperinflated, and then, you know, is now kind of coming back. And what I'm kind of seeing from this is that earlier it used to take 50 years to see a change in a government's policies, but now in 10 years you can see a difference. And one of the ways I see that is actually with, you know, where you work, Animoca. Recently they've kind of doubled down on their Hong Kong bet, and you know, Hong Kong made some decisions that could be considered not pro-business during COVID, right? But in the last 18 months, they've been so forward with their, especially crypto regulation. I mean, as someone who works in Web3 day in and day out, I can see already Hong Kong getting back that top spot, and it's quite interesting.
Yeah, never discount Hong Kong. I mean, that place is like, think about, it's a catch basin for like some of the most kind of ambitious and, you know, just hardest working Chinese, right? And there's like a true DNA there. And, you know, just as, you know, crypto is illegal in China ever since 2018, but gambling is illegal in China, right? But Macau outstrips Vegas in terms of receipts.
Yeah.
They allow it to happen, right? There's 31 provinces on the mainland, and then there's Macau and Hong Kong and Taiwan. So China looks at it as 34 provinces, but Hong Kong is one country, two systems, and until 2047, and I do believe that Hong Kong could very well become the most progressive and most attractive place for crypto. And it's like, in some ways they need that, because they need something to really differentiate themselves. I just got back from Singapore this morning, and like that place is, going from strength to strength. Dubai is competing very aggressively as well too. And I think, Hong Kong is going to become, a favorite, maybe the most favorable place for companies to set up shop.
It's certainly looking like that, because Singapore's kind of seems potentially like it's taking a little bit of more safe and thoughtful approach, conservative. But another area I find interesting about this whole future of government policy area is that, I was overhearing Balaji in fact talk about how hyperinflation, what is it defined as? It's when your currency is inflating 50% year on year. But we always use that inflation metric against the country's currency in the US dollar. But if you use the country's currency in Bitcoin, pretty much every country in the world is in hyperinflation. And so it made me think that monetary policy, and especially how you manage your currency, is going to get less and less important. And more we're going to start seeing the policies you have for businesses to grow, for innovation, becoming the most critical part.
Yeah, certainly. I tasted that in China for those 20 years, and I think it's something that Balaji is trying to move towards with Network School. But there's Hong Kong and Shenzhen and Singapore and Dubai, even like Las Vegas, no natural resources, and they just created some sort of economic miracle, sort of out of supposed thin air. But it actually was really all the policies, whether it's legalizing gambling or creating a special economic zone or putting some sort of tax infrastructure, tax policy in place in Dubai or in Ireland. My ancestors never were prosperous ever in the history of that country, and now it's become
huge windfall.
Yeah, and huge GDP per capita, and it's upside down crazy town. And you look at Singapore with Lee Kuan Yew and his policies. It's possible. It really is possible to enact change and do it quickly. And you see countries like Estonia that are run like companies that are adopt digital infrastructure and just become I think of my University of Southern California, USC, where it was there were some quite good schools, the engineering and the accounting and the film school, but it wasn't really like an elite university. But that was in the 80s when I was there. But now with just so much endowment, and they have the sort of right kind of there's been a lot of scandals. You can't spell scandal without SC, but it's become a very, very difficult to get into, and very elite university. And it's like
Kogo is, really, really well recognized.
And it's something where they've really, been intentional and able to do that, right? And that's why I have hope for also like a city like San Francisco, like New York in the 70s was absolutely miserable, right? And even into the 80s, and now it's Times Square is like a Disneyland, and things can change pretty rapidly, one way or the other. But I think we're definitely in post-normal times, and I'm just happy to be alive. I'm just give me more popcorn, front row seat at the show.
But clearly, you have a knack for finding the next best thing since your college days.
I just want to be where, I want to be in the Frisbee dog park, where there's the most action and the most frisbees and tennis balls and sticks flying all over the place, and I'm just like, woohoo, let's go, right?
Yeah.
And I just get excited, and I just want to take that energy and just help to amplify and interconnect it all. It's just, I'm just like a shark that can't stop swimming, right? I just want to keep connecting and interacting and building.
That's totally true. So I did want to ask you, a lot of people draw parallels to where Web3 is right now and, the days of the .com bubble and stuff like that. Do you agree with those analogies?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I was asked, I knew Yat, the founder of Animoca, since '97, like right in the middle of it all during Web 1.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know? Yeah, and and I was in Riyadh with him and Robbie, and then it was like, oh, how did you meet Yat? And he's like, oh, I met Yat at one of Richard's events, because I used to pull people together and get people together. No flex, right? But then all that karma like comes back to you, like I said, right? Now I'm working with those guys who I've known those guys for 27 years now, and they're excellent. I just want to be, if I'm going to get out of the hobbit hole and go to Mordor, I want to be with that ragtag group of elves and dwarves and wizards, right?
Right.
And so .com boom back then, I knew Yat, and that was one of the reasons why he asked me to be an advisor almost 4 years ago when things started to really, pump with Web3. He's like, you've been through Web 1 and Web 2 and kind of the smartphone, wave, and then also China wave as well too. And you're covered in scabs and calluses and scar tissue and like armor, and you can help some of our, you can help guide me and some of the other people into battle, right? You see what happened in Web 1, and like sure there's parallels, right? Web 1 was a clunky, blinky GIF kind of like, messing away with dial-up modems, and,
right?
Browser plugins and no business models and all kinds of clunkiness around it. But I gotta say, Web 3 is way more clunky. It's much more of a pain in the ass than Web 1. It's really insane how I just got stuck the other day. I'm like, I want to go get Solana, but like, I don't have enough ETH to be able to swap that into this. And now I'm like, I can't even on-ramp stuff. And then once I on-ramp it, I've been in this industry for 3.5 years, and I'm still like, now, it's just really,
It has so much potential.
I look at the potential, and I smell it, and I see it, and I love it. But right now, like, it's really, your strengths are right next to your weaknesses always, right? So, the tokenized version of the internet, it's amazing, but, the downside is that it's a tokenized version of the internet, so it's a speculative bubble, so people just want to token go up, great, we have a community, token go down, see you later, right? So
financialization of everything.
But I really do, see with these past waves that there will be a stabilization, and there will be this mass adoption, and there will be this sort of view of like, wow, how did we ever do things that were not necessarily, token gated events, or being able to, get compensated for tokens or for your time and treasure that you put into things. Like how did we do things before? We were like, vassals in a fiefdom where we were just working in the fields, and there was Lord Zuckerberg and Order of Microsoft and House of Google, and they were like, we got nothing and liked it, right? And it's actually kind of silly. Like why did we just give them everything for pretty much nothing in exchange, right? Because we just didn't know any better, right?
And there's no other option.
No other option. But now the option is here, but it's still as yet fully unrealized. It's like some gawky, pimply, weird, tween that's just very awkward still, right? And it just needs a little time to turn into a beautiful swan.
Yeah, and hopefully both of us will make that impact over the next few years.
Just front row seat at the show. Just keep going, right? Can't control the outcome, but just the output, and just keep on going, put in the reps, and next thing you know, you look back and you're like, wow, look at how high we've come up the peak, and what an amazing ride it's been.
Yeah. So, okay, I will be wrapping up in just a couple extra minutes. I did want to ask you, I know you have 3 lovely children. A couple of them are in college now. You mentor so many people like me. But to the 18 to 21-year-old in college right now who wants to go into tech entrepreneurship, do you have a couple of lines that you would give as blanket advice for how to go about getting started?
Yeah, I often get asked, like, how do I become an entrepreneur? And, one thing that I did, when options were lower is just try to do something to build up my grit and resilience. I didn't know I was necessarily doing that at the time, but I was looking for challenges and things to, just make me a tougher person that's sort of just like filled with gratitude just to be in the game, right? There's definitely ways to be able to increase that kind of mental toughness, and I can we can do a whole nother episode on that. Another way is to like, hey, I'm going to become, I think, chief of staff. You were chief of staff, right? I think that wasn't really a role. That was like something you did for the president, But I think chief of staff is like a great role in that you're getting this, kind of MBA in a way, because you're shadowing somebody and you're really being, I used to, before chief of staff came out, I was like, this is what you do, just get any job at the company, but then go to the founder and say, hey, I want to work another 30 hours a week, and I will help you to write the deck. I want to shadow you on some of your meetings. I want to be able to like just clean up whatever messes, manage things for you. Like let me just be of help. And like, when you're early on in your career, you're working with somebody, you should just be, a person that just takes ownership of things, even if it's not your fault or even your responsibility. You're able to, make the person's life easier. Then you're going to become invaluable, right?
Yeah,
so, but then along the way, you're really seeing how they're talking to investors, how they're talking to their board, how they're talking to their reports, and how they're talking to each other, right? And I think that's valuable. But another way, which wasn't really so attainable before, is to just build it, right? Even when I started my career 30 years ago, you couldn't even host things. Like, you had to like buy a Sun, microsystems server for, $16,000 or $26,000 and wait 6 weeks for it to be delivered. And then you had to like take it to the back in my day, right? But like take it to the data center and hook it up, right? And like, you wanted a good laptop, like that was like $5,000, which would be like the equivalent of like $10,000 or $15,000 now. And you had to pay for software, and you had to pay for like a PR firm, and you had to pay for ad agency, and all of these, like the costs were so high, it was really difficult to be able to. Now it's like, maybe 50 grand to be able to build something, right? 25 grand to build it, maybe 25 grand to promote it, and like you could probably even do it for like even 20 grand, right? You can just and you can just get a side. You can just get a job, and like this is your side hustle, and you're just building on the side. Like you should just be building, and you should make the first few bad pancakes and just do things, because
I think that makes so much sense.
Like having a degree is not going to give you safety. Having a job is not going to give you safety, right?
Yeah.
Even having like you have to constantly kind of like fire yourself and move up the value chain and unlearn and relearn, and that's just the way things are. But there's so much opportunity if you're willing to put in the reps. Like almost like I love Naval Ravikant. He's like he has that great thing, How to Be Rich, and he's like there's so many. He's preposterously quotable, and he's like just lift heavy things and sleep well and eat well, and make sure you're I'm messing up the tweet, but make sure you're putting in the reps and focusing on stuff that's within your control. And he's like, victory is assured, right? And victory is assured, right? You have to just
he's a great writer.
Rewrite what, how you define victory. But I think, forget about doing the moonshot or getting, rich on some meme coin. Go ahead and try, but just keep building stuff. And it's a vocation, right? You have to do like many, many different cycles to be able to just, continue learning and improve.
Makes perfect sense. Rich, we normally end the credits with the current favorite song you have. So.
Oh my goodness. So I have an 8-year-old girl who happens to love Taylor Swift. Like
fantastic.
I don't even know. Like I had two sons. One's at University of Hawaii, one's at Trinity College Dublin, but they're like 20 and 18. And now I have, my second current and final wife, amazing, lovely woman who you know
She's
well.
lovely.
And my daughter, so now I live, I don't even know, like, honey, do I like this shirt? I don't know. Do we like this song? I'm just listening to pop music. We listen to One Direction, Tay all day. So yeah, I don't even know. I can't even.
Okay, I'll check with her and I'll pick one for you.
Yes, ask her what my favorite song is right now.
Thanks so much, Rich.
Agastya, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much for coming on the show.